Welcome to Module 6, the joy of intentional income. Intentional income, what is that? Is that just another word for budgeting? Well, yeah, kind of. You got me. But it's not just all false positivity or pretending to make something fun that's horrible. What I've seen is that when people actually use this method, it works. And I've seen it over and over. It's worked for me. And so I'd like to pass it on. This is a step-by-step guide. It's not going to take me that long to explain this all, but out of all the modules, this one actually can take the longest. Like, this is not a quick and easy fix. This does take a little bit more of a time commitment. All right, so we're going to start by actually going back to your top values. So if you don't remember what your top values are, I want you to go back to your journal or wherever you're recording your values, and we're going to recenter those values. And how the intentional income method works is that all of your spending decisions and all of your categorization of your budget and all of it, just everything comes around your values. And when the reason that it works is that when your goals and your spending are directly in line with your values, that's when it feels joyful. Because when you're getting to do what you want with your money, and not just what you think you want, like sometimes you think you want nachos from 7-Eleven, but is that really in your core value? No, right? Or maybe it is. Maybe you really love nachos. But deep down, you want to make sure that your spending is aligned with your deep down values because it's so easy to spend money everywhere. And it doesn't matter how much money you make, there will always be places to spend your money that's not in line with your values. So whether you barely make any money or you make a lot of money, this works for everyone. Now, again, I'll be honest, not all of my clients do this. Some of my clients just have zero desire to budget, no matter how fun I make it sound by being intentional and joyful. But for the people who do it, it works for it's worked for pretty much everyone. I mean, I'm trying to think of an example when it hasn't worked. And the reason it works is that because there's less resistance. When you feel like you're cutting things out of your budget, like you can't get something, you don't want to do that. It just doesn't feel good. But because you're going in line with what your core values are, you actually want to budget this way. And that's why it becomes joyful. So does it actually work? Yes. Partially for the reasons I just said. I've seen clients do this for 8 years. I've also experienced it myself. There's also plenty of research that I've linked there if you want to dive into those links that show that yes, when you take time to look at your budget and you actually look at where your money is going, it works. And it works because it changes your habits and it changes your mind. This takes 6 months. I'm sure people say that it takes less, but and you can start to see results sooner. But for this to actually work for you, to actually start spending in line with your values, it takes time because it does mean you're changing some habits. So you can start to see in month one some immediate feedback. So the good news is you don't have to wait 6 months to see the good results. And what happens is you just start to have more and more money mindfulness over time. In month one, and I think Rocket Money does a great job of these advertisements. If you've seen any of them, they talk about how they interview someone and they say, "Oh, how many subscriptions do you think you have?" And usually they're like, "Oh, I don't know, 2 or something or 3." And then they're like, "You have 25," And it's not always quite like that, but I'd say almost always people have extra subscriptions they don't know about. Usually in month one, you have some of those initial surprises that you had no idea you were still enrolled in that gym, or that you have 2 Netflix subscriptions instead of one. By month 4, you'll already be observing a lot of trends. The example that happened to my husband and I is we thought that we were saving money by going to happy hour when we first moved to Denver before we had kids. And then we realized, wait, happy hour actually isn't that inexpensive. Just because you're getting some deals or half-priced apps, it doesn't really mean that you're actually saving money by going to happy hour. And then month 6, you'll actually be setting goals and then meeting them. And that is a huge breakthrough where it feels like pure joy, the joy of reaching your goals or sometimes exceeding your goals. And then knowing that now that you've reached your goals, it means that you get to do what you actually want to do with your money. Do you want to go on vacation? Do you want to update your house? Do you want to buy a new dress? Whatever you want, you can do that because you've actually planned for it and you have a plan and it's in line with your values. And so that's where the joy comes in the joy of intentional income because you do have control. And again, it does not matter what your budget is. You always have room to shift things around in your budget. You are in control of it, even if it's really tight. Let's start by choosing our platform. As I mentioned in module 1, two great options are Rocket Money and Monarch Money. I do recommend that you pick something that connects your bank account and your credit cards rather than doing, say, something in Excel or just in a journal. Now, if you absolutely love Excel and you already have a method, then you can apply this tutorial to your Excel method or your journal method. I've had some clients who are super organized and their process is working, and I am not about to mess with their process that's working. But the reason why I think it's helpful to connect the bank and the credit cards is that it's really easy to ignore purchases and forget about purchases. So if you're not going to connect your bank and credit card, you've got to go in regularly and I guess just manually do everything, which means you're manually picking out every transaction and then adding it up either in a journal or in Excel. The reason that I personally don't use an Excel or a journal is that's just incredibly time consuming. And I've got 2 kids and a couple businesses, and I don't have time to personally do it all by hand. And so I've always been a big fan of automation. I like to automate wherever I can. And that's why I've always used tools. I used to use Mint, and then I switched over to Rocket Money, and then now I've switched over to Monarch Money. I think both of them are great options. Monarch Money I like slightly better because it's more intuitive. And just the whole layout of the system looks better. And right now, this system I'm showing you on the screen, I guess it's that way on the screen. That's Monarch Money, and there's just a lot of options. It has all of your budget. It also has there's screens with your net worth. There's just lots of options, the goals, reports, your cash flow. Pretty much anything you need is all going to be on Monarch. So if you decide not to use Monarch Money and you decide to use something else, just know that this tutorial can be adapted to anything. And speaking of Monarch Money, I believe the price currently, this is May 2024, is about, I think it's about $9 per month. Okay, so first things first, to set up Monarch Money, you do connect any bank account and any credit cards that you use for spending. So here's something you need to consider. If you are a business owner, and you need to exclude those business accounts because your business should be fully separate. We've talked about in the last module, your business account should be separate from your personal account anyways, and your whole business your business accounting system should be separate. So for this intentional income method, this is not designed for businesses. That's a whole different area of accounting, and there's all kinds of strategies for that. But this is for your personal spending and your personal values. And so any place that you're going to have a transaction, that's where that you need to have that connected. So that's step 1. Then you're going to think of custom subcategories and add them. And this is the most important part. And the reason it's important is because the way that the categories are listed aren't necessarily they're not in line with your values. And so, for example, when my husband and I first moved to Denver, and that's when we were budgeting a lot, we decided we wanted to meet people. And so we actually wanted to go out and socialize with other people. We wanted to accept invitations to happy hour or to hiking or wherever. So we had a category for food that was called social dining. And to be in line with our values, we made social dining a larger amount in our budget goals versus we also had another category called lazy food and coffee. And that was just simply, oh, we don't feel like cooking. We're just going to get takeout. Okay, that's a complete, those are two completely different things. One fits with our values, one doesn't. Okay, one of these automatic tools like Monarch or Rocket Money, they're just going to put that all into one category. Whether you intended to go with friends or not, either way, they might just put it in, so for example, food and dining. And so you want to actually separate it out to make sure that you know which category it's in. Okay, some other examples of where I like to have custom categories. Sometimes I just smash a bunch of categories together because I don't need all of the detail of, for example, all of my bills. I just have home, like all of my home stuff that's fixed, plus insurance stuff that's fixed, and plus I just smash it all together in bills rather than having a bunch of different categories, just because I want to keep that one simple. It's probably fixed anyways. So there's, I think less is more. The less categories you can have, the better. So, there's are some exceptions. Like I gave the exception of creating an extra category for social dining versus lazy food and coffee. But as much as you can, also compress categories, because then it's quicker to categorize. And you want to make this process of budgeting as quick and simple as possible, even though it's going to take you 6 months of doing it to feel the joy. You still want to make it as quick as possible. Okay, once you've created your categories, then you are going to categorize them each week. And when I say each week, what I actually mean is at least 3 times a week to start. The reason that you want to categorize them at least 3 times a week is if you let it go too long, then it just gets overwhelming and you just don't do it. Or when you do it, you don't remember what the purchases were for. I mean, do you remember what you spent at Target a week and a half ago? Do you remember what it was for? If you do, good for you. Your memory's a lot better than mine. I can barely remember things, from a few days ago sometimes. I certainly am not going to remember the exact Target purchase from 2 weeks ago. And so that's why I recommend you do it at least 3 times a week. And I'd say at first, plan for about 20 minutes. Now, it depends on, of course, how much you buy. I mean, I do it with my spouse and we have kids, so we have a lot of transactions. We have our different cards. Ours are combined all into one. And so you can do that if you want, or you can keep it separate from your spouse if that's what you prefer. But ours involves some conversation, so that's probably why ours takes 20 minutes. But after you do it a while, it gets shorter and shorter. So it can turn into, maybe 10 minutes 3 times a week. So just know that whatever system you pick, it starts out a little longer and it'll get faster and faster and faster. And when you do it regularly, it's just not painful. It's just easy and it becomes a habit. I mean, it can even be something where, sometimes if you're just looking at your phone and you end up on Instagram, well, instead of ending up on Instagram, just end up on Monarch Money or Rocket Money or whichever app you pick. One other thing before I go on to the goals, there are lots of cool features in pretty much any system where you can split transactions, and also you can set up automation. So that's part of why it gets faster, is the system will start to remember, oh yeah, that's always groceries, or that's always bills. And that way you're not having to constantly categorize every single thing. A lot of them will become automatic. The ones that you do automate, just so you know, you can always review them and change them. So if Safeway is normally groceries, but then one time you buy a gift there, you can change part of the transaction or the whole transaction to gift. Initially, in the first few months, you don't need to worry about budget goals. And that reason for that is in the first few months, you're just starting to learn patterns. Most people, what they think they're spending in different categories is wildly off from what they're actually spending. And so it's almost like there's no point in creating goals initially, because you're just going to be so far off anyways. I mean, maybe that's a pessimistic attitude, but I'm just like, this is what I see with clients. It's really far off. And so after you've collected the data for 3 to 4 months, then you can start to set your budget goals. And basically, it's really fun because it'll show you, how are you doing? It'll show you if you're under budget, it's green. When you're over budget, it's red. Some of them have yellow. I mean, and I feel like all the systems are pretty good at having a clear visual of how it's looking. And one thing I like about Monarch Money is you can have budgets that roll over. So for example, something like a vacation budget, you're not going to have the same you're not going to spend the same amount on vacations every month. Some months you might have zero, some months would be a lot. And so what it does is it rolls it over, and you can make it so that if you don't spend it one month, it gets moved to the next month. And that way you can still keep on track for, hey, how are you doing on, vacations for the year, for example. Or something like, a clothes shopping budget might be another example of that. And so it can be great because you can really track your progress and have some real visual feedback, which is always nice. Okay, after you've done this for 6 months and you've started to meet budget goals, you've got to celebrate your success because I'm telling you, your life will be changed from this. And and the reason is because as your whole mindset gets changed, as you start to realize what you're actually spending, and you realize that you actually do have the ability to meet your budget goals, regardless of your income. And so go out, do something fun. Is one of your core values art and culture? Go out and see a show, go to a concert, like really celebrate it. You've probably actually saved up in that category. Maybe you've saved up in your entertainment category, and you need to go out and go spend that money. That's the whole point of this, is you're directing your money to things that you value. And so actually celebrate it. Intentional income is not about just cutting things out and being stingy. It's about living joyfully in your values, and the money is how you're able to achieve some of those things. So keep that in mind. And then you realize, oh wow, look, I'm able to do what I want. And then know that you've actually shifted your way your brain thinks. You've had permanent shifts in your brain that can last the rest of your life. And getting to the 6 month mark, it can take some help. For one, I went over like the how to of the Monarch Money kind of quickly, but you might have some extra questions. And so that's the purpose of our online community and the monthly mastermind. I want to make sure that you have time to check in on, hey, how do you do this in Monarch or in Rocket? Or what's your tip for doing this? And we can all help each other. Also, we can just hold each other accountable. Like, hey, how's it going? What budget goals did you meet? I mean, just little things like that, having a community that's working together can really make a big difference. And then, of course, there's always the option for one-on-one help. So I just want you to know that you're not alone in this journey, and just take it step by step, and you can get there. You can get to spending within your budget. All right, for the action steps, end of today, just decide which system you want to use. And then by the end of the week, pick your custom categories and just set up the system. By the end of the month, go ahead and start categorizing your transactions.